Hello and welcome to the agenda on Politics Social with me and Phil Moorhouse. How you doing, Phil? Are you all right?
I'm not too bad at the moment, thank you very much.
And
Better than James Cleverly.
Better than James Cleverly, yeah. So Phil runs the Different Bias channel, so if you can tune into him and subscribe, that'd be great. Oh my God. So we'll start off talking about the Tory leadership contest for a little bit. But then I want to talk about where I think things are going to go next for the Tory party. We were just discussing before we came on. You feel like we've been a bit harsh on poor old James Cleverly.
Only him personally, because what happened was, on the third round of voting, he was actually ahead. He was ahead of Jenrick and Badenoch, very marginally, but ahead.
Yeah.
And Tom Tugendhat got knocked out. He'd previously had 20 votes. Well, he had 20 votes. So that's from a moderate. So you've got 20, not all of them necessarily were all that moderate because he wanted to leave the ECHR, sort of, and didn't. But nonetheless, most of them would be moderate votes. So, of course, most of them would go to James Cleverly. James Cleverly was going to win the final MPs round quite comfortably. And it was really just a case of whether it was Jenrick or Badenoch.
Right.
And then Cleverly gets knocked out because we're trying to piece together exactly what happened because no MP that's responsible for this will publicly.
Yeah, but they had to cobble together at least 40 votes, and that's a very high number 41. For a Conservative. I don't think they know how to count that high.
No, well, this is the problem. They got Grant Shapps. The problem with Tory MPs, they think Grant Shapps is actually a strategic genius. You know?
Oh,
do you know why?
Because he's also known as Corinne Stockheath.
No.
Okay.
Because he has this special device. It's like a tablet, but it's got two screens, and he has Excel spreadsheets on it, and it wows them all.
You do that though, Phil.
Magic.
You send me Excel spreadsheets, and I just go, I'm going to defer to your better judgment on this. Because I can't do an Excel spreadsheet.
But that's what they do. He goes around with all these things, and they all think he's this magician, right? Because they can't believe it. You've got two screens.
Yeah.
So you can see two workbooks at once. But anyway, it's so Grant Shapps was apparent, and all of this it's all very off the record, us trying to piece it together. But clearly what was happening is some MPs were trying to vote tactically to try and throw in the one that they thought Cleverly could most easily beat.
Yeah.
Some of them were just voting for their second preference because they thought Cleverly had the votes he needed. Grant Shapps was egging all this on, saying, "Oh yeah, we need to do." And the problem, and it would have worked even then. Over egging it would have been absolutely fine if all of those tactical votes had been either for Jenrick or for Badenoch. But they weren't. They were sort of somehow split evenly between the two. So some of them clearly thought that it was better to use their tactical vote for Badenoch, and some clearly thought it for Jenrick. So it was all a hideous disaster. But to be fair to James Cleverly, again, according to unofficial reports, because that's all it will ever be, he was going to admit to this, he was actually going around saying, no, let's not be too clever here. I mean, of course, he's going to say that. And, let's make sure we win. So, poor old James Cleverly there. Actually, I suppose he demonstrated his lack of leadership skills because he couldn't even get his own supporters to vote for him. When he was asking them not to be too clever with the tactical voting. He says, actually, can you vote for me, please? So if he couldn't even get his own supporters to vote for him, he probably wouldn't have got those who were backing Jenrick or Badenoch too in leadership. So maybe they dodged their own bullet there.
But I mean, this is it is embarrassing. There's so few Tory MPs. You only need a third of them to get through to this round. A bit more than a third. That's what you needed. There's only 121 Tory MPs. Do you reckon Cleverly forgot to vote for himself?
Like. No, I don't. This is what it looked like. You've literally got Kemi Badenoch.
It's 120 votes there.
There were exactly 120 because Rishi Sunak said he would not vote. So he's kept his word and everyone else has voted.
120 votes.
You needed 41 to be guaranteed.
So Cleverly actually lost 2 votes. I think he forgot to vote for himself. I think he got confused.
What'll have happened?
Because Badenoch would have come up first on the list.
No, in that previous round, those 2 votes that Cleverly lost were probably tactical votes in the third round. They were probably Jenrick supporters who wanted to make sure Cleverly beat Tugendhat. And they just flipped back. That's all that's happened there.
That's just bananas, isn't it?
But he should have absolutely vacuumed up loads of those Tugendhat votes.
Yeah. But like, he should have just gone for it. Do you know what I mean? Like,
he did. It's his supporters and Grant Shapps who cocked it up. To be fair,
he should have had 69 votes.
Well, he should have had a fair number. I don't know about City, but he should have. Yeah, he should have been well in the lead, and it really was a case of
massively in the lead.
And the thing there, that would have also made him much more likely to win the whole 59. Thing, because the members were already warming to him. And if MPs basically say, this is the one we want, I know they ignore it a lot of the time, but, you know, it does nonetheless send a message to members that this is the one the MPs really like. And if they're thinking, well, yeah, we quite like him too, then he did actually have a good chance of winning. Yeah. Now it's gone.
Sean saying, I've got my Farage Halloween mask. So this is what I wanted to talk about, because when you did the show yesterday, when you did Morning Brew, you were sort of poo-pooing any idea that Farage might try a hostile takeover bid of the Tory party. And I want to discuss this because I think that is so at the back of his head. He was at the Tory party conference last year, dancing with Suella Braverman.
That's his grift, though. He exists. His grift exists to try and steer the Conservative Party in a particular direction, which he can do more easily. In order for Nigel Farage to even get into the Conservative Parliamentary Party, let alone become leader, 3 groups of people would all have to want it at the same time.
Okay.
And at the moment, those 3 groups of people, there's good reason to believe none of them would want it.
Okay, who are the
groups? First is Nigel Farage.
Farage, okay.
The second are Conservative MPs in general.
Okay, we can buy them.
And no.
Yes.
Bear
£1 million each. 100. No. There's only 120 of them. 120 million pounds to buy a country.
No.
That's cheap, mate.
They don't want it.
You couldn't buy Nauru for that.
The third person is the Tory leader, who would be basically inviting their own assassin into the house.
Oh, no. Well, that's the thing. I don't think it's going to happen until this Tory leader's out.
Doesn't matter. There has to be a Tory leader, and they're not going to invite their own assassin in.
Well, I think when
they can easily stop it. Boris Johnson is a more difficult case.
Do you think they'll get through to another election, or do you think they'll drop out before the election?
I don't think they'll last till the next election.
You don't think they're going to last till the next election? So
I don't think that's certain, because it just depends how. But you know, you look at that message from the One Nation Tories, and they're basically saying they refuse to endorse either candidate, and it does depend who wins. Arguably, Kemi Badenoch can win them over more easily than Robert Jenrick. Robert Jenrick, because of his insistence on leaving the ECHR, he's really insisting on pursuing a policy that is almost designed to repel a third of his parliamentary party.
Yes, but don't forget, a lot of the nutters, a lot of the sensible people have been cut out, and a lot of the nutters have run the Tory party now for over 8 years.
They haven't run it. They've given the impression of running it, because the people who have been running it, only Liz Truss was a nutter. All of the rest, even Boris Johnson is not a nutter.
Is he not?
He is not. He's not one of them. He went along with it for power.
Well, you could argue that Farage isn't a nutter either. And if there was a foreign dictator of a country who has pretty much unlimited resources, paying off Farage so he can keep his Coots bank account, and then paying £1 million to each of those 120 Tory MPs to keep them on side, I think they'll be up for it.
No one would do that. The Reform UK...
Putin would.
No, he wouldn't. Reform UK are already being very effective from the outside in steering the Conservative Party in that direction.
Yes.
And they can't even get much in the way of donations.
But don't you think Farage wants money and power? Those are two things that drive Farage.
But he doesn't.
Do you not think he'd like to be Prime Minister of the United Kingdom?
He loses them by joining the Conservative Party.
No, he go away. He's the leader, and he wins the next election.
He won't win the next election.
Because can't win the next election. Labour's support is...
No, it's irrelevant. No, it's not.
It's very wide, but not very deep.
It doesn't matter. Nigel Farage is absolutely hated. He's hated by... There's lots of Conservative MPs and voters who hate him.
Yeah, Boris Johnson was exactly the same. Boris Johnson, in the summer of 2019, people were going, oh, but the Tory party hate him. They properly hate him.
No, that's MPs.
Yes.
And the reason that's not voters. That's a big, huge difference.
Yeah, but
whereas with Nigel Farage,
I've not met a Tory who didn't like him.
Vote.
I've not met a Tory who thinks that Nigel Farage goes too far. The ones I've met have said, they should listen to Nigel Farage and be more extreme.
So let me read out what these Tories you've never met have just said. Yeah. As the home of One Nation Conservatives in 1975, blah, 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 blah. Throughout the contest, we've sought to engage extensively with all the leadership campaigns in order to understand the views and approach of the candidates. Unfortunately, we've been for this basically a third of Tory MPs.
Dropped out there. Sorry.
I'm just saying, they've just described the rhetoric employed by Jenrick and Badenoch, which is much tamer than Farage, as being beyond the pale for them to support.
Yes. But then they said the same thing about Boris Johnson.
No,
they did support him.
No.
They supported him to the hilt. There weren't any big rebels after he got rid of the rebels.
No. You're completely misremembering it. They didn't support Boris Johnson. They actually said, they were actually saying to him, you're shit. How are you going to run a government? And he said he would arrange this cabinet of superstars, right? The reason they backed him is because they wanted to win the election.
Yes.
And they knew that Boris Johnson could do that. But they also
Nigel Farage can do that.
Can't. No, he can't. He's too unpopular. The public hate him. They've never...
Well, we do, but we're not the majority,
the public hate him. The public hate him. It's polls, it's really clear. The public absolutely despise him. And unlike when you look at approval ratings for a lot of politicians, like even Badenoch and Jenrick, you'll say, oh, it's very negative. But that's because there's this huge don't know. There's a lot of the public don't really know them.
Well, what about Boris Johnson then? They're talking about bringing back Boris Johnson every verse.
Yeah, he's
and the public
unpopular.
Hate him.
They hate him now, but they didn't at the time.
Yeah, but they still talk about bringing him back, and there are enough Tories that are stupid enough. You're mistaking the fact that Tories, the Tories in charge. I think you're imbibing them with qualities that they don't have in terms of reasonableness and common sense.
They have said they will not support Badenoch and Jenrick because of this rhetoric. Farage's rhetoric is way.
So are they going to leave the party? Are they going to lead the party?
No,
one of them's going to win.
Leave the party. They don't have to leave the party. Right. Go through the process. Right.
Yeah.
The process for Nigel Farage.
No. Go through Badenoch and Jenrick first.
No, we don't need to do that.
No, when they get elected, one of them becomes the leader. Are these rebels are 40 of them just not going to vote with the Tory party? They're going to leave?
No, they don't need to do that. You're trying to say that Nigel Farage can come into the Tory party. I am going to explain to you the three groups of people who will make it impossible, one of whom is Nigel Farage. But we can leave him for a moment. Nigel Farage, right, in order to become leader, he has to defect to the Conservative Party.
Yes.
That means the Tory leader at the time has to allow that. There's no vote, doesn't go to members, doesn't go to MPs. Remember what happened with defections to Labour in the last Parliament, including Natalie Elphicke. It's just the leader who decides.
So who's going to be the leader? Robert Jenrick or Kemi Badenoch? Both of whom have the morality of a snake.
No, but they're inviting their own assassin in.
Yeah, but if they know they're on the way out anyway...
No.
And they want to win the next election.
No.
Do you think their ego will stop it happening?
If they're on their way out, they won't be able to allow the defection anyway.
Why not?
So
they're still leader.
No,
they're circling
because
the drain.
although I say it's the leader's decision, technically, the people that manage the defections are the whips.
Okay.
In terms of parliamentary procedures.
Okay. And if Nigel Farage tried to cross the floor, you think that they'll say, no, we don't want you?
Yes.
Yeah, even though
he doesn't cross the floor.
His party
on the same side.
Because he joined it, became one of the most voted for parties in the country, like literally overnight. Before that, no one really cared about refuck. But then as soon as he stood in, suddenly they're coming in second in places.
He increased it by about 3%. At most.
Didn't they get more votes than the Lib Dems in the end?
Yeah, but they were looking like that for years when Richard Tice was in charge of them. That's what they were on for.
I thought that it was when Farage came in that really started kicking off.
It got a boost, but it was a boost of like 3%, which is still significant.
Yeah,
but it's like
But I don't believe that Nigel Farage has some kind of limit of like, no, I don't want the wealth, I don't want the power.
No, it's not. No, he won't get the wealth. He'll lose the wealth. That's what you don't understand. He's been paid, right? His support base. Are anti-establishment. If he joins the Conservative, they hate the Conservative Party. If he joins the Conservative Party, some of his supporters will go, "Yeah, great, you're gonna
take it in the right direction.
Exactly.
You're gonna fix it."
But the rest of them are gonna hate it because he's betrayed them. He's gone to the establishment.
But if he's going into the establishment to destroy it, that's the Trumpist thing, isn't it? You know, he's not part of the deep state. He's there to destroy it on behalf of you and me.
First of all, okay, if you insist that somehow this Tory leader will invite their own assassin into the house, why would Farage do it if he can't become leader?
He can. He will.
Now, how?
Eventually.
How does he become leader? How does he become leader?
He crosses the well, he doesn't need to cross. He stays on the same benches. He just moves up a little bit. He doesn't need another election. There doesn't need to be a by-election to parachute him in. He doesn't have to be made a member of the House of Lords. He's already an MP. There does have to be an election.
There does have to be an election.
Why?
Because Tory MPs vote for their leader. And Tory
No. I'm talking about him joining the Tory party.
No, he won't join it unless he is... Right, for Nigel Farage, can you at least agree, for Nigel Farage to join, he would have to, in his own mind, be guaranteed to be made their leader and guaranteed to win the next election.
No, I don't
Otherwise,
believe
what's
that.
the point?
Because someone's given him.
Why would he?
Someone whose name rhymes with Vladimir Putin wants to give him 50 million pounds to do what he's told.
Give him any money. If he's already given him all the money he's going to, or the amounts he's given him are the same amounts now. He's already happy with him. Farage is already turning the Conservative Party into and it's now guaranteed.
Yeah, but I'm talking about not just that, not just the money, but his ego. Like the two things that drive Farage are his money and his ego. And if you can appeal to both.
Putin does not give Farage any extra money unless he becomes Prime Minister or can become Prime Minister, because Farage can do nothing as leader of the opposition.
Yeah, but he wouldn't be.
He can't do anything.
If he became leader of the opposition, there's a chance of him becoming Prime Minister. There's no chance at the moment. There's no chance.
I'm saying there is no chance of him becoming Prime Minister, but it doesn't matter. For Farage, right, all right, let's look at this scenario, right? Okay. Nigel Farage is... Because you said to me no, and I want you to explain why Nigel Farage would join the Conservative Party unless he thought he could become Prime Minister.
Yes, I think that's what would appeal to him to join the party.
No, but when I said that, you said no.
I'm talking about his ego and the money.
No, I don't care about
you said that he would lose money by joining the Tories. Yes. I don't think that's true. I think he would make more money.
All the money
from the oligarchs, from the Russian mafia, from whoever funds him at the moment.
So why doesn't Robert Jenrick get this money? Why doesn't Robert Jenrick get this?
Because he's not going to win. He's not going to become Prime Minister.
Neither's Nigel.
He's not a populist leader.
He's going to become Prime Minister. Robert Jenrick is more popular than Nigel Farage with the British public.
Really?
Yes, everyone is more popular than Nigel Farage.
How can we get so many votes then? Because what are the stats on this? Because
they don't get so many votes. They got 14%. That's 14% of the people who turned out to vote. By the way, that is way less than 14% of the electorate. Those are the harder nutters. This is the same reason why he could easily get himself into the European Parliament. There's always, in fact, 14% shit. Should have been 20%. But there are 20% of lunatics in any country.
Phil, look at who voted. Look who voted. Look at the percentage that voted for the Tories in this election. Yes. Look at the percentage that voted for refuck. Smush them together, and you've got a winning.
Oh my God!
You've got a winning percentage.
You're making the Tory mistake here. You can't smush them together.
Why not?
First, right? Okay, let's go down the list. First of all, those 14% of vote, and this is what Tories keep getting wrong, and it's badly wrong. That 14% did not come from the Conservative Party. A lot of it came from the Conservative Party. Some of it came from the Labour. Some of it came from Lib Dems. Yeah. Some of it came from the Green Party, which is really weird in my head, right? So that 14% is actually built up of votes coming from every party you can name. Yeah. Just the majority of it was from the Conservatives, right? So straight away, if Reform UK, and the thing, it's not strange because if you look at Reform UK's offer, so a lot of it's the anti-immigration thing. Well, that appeals to people as on the left as well. There's plenty of people on the left that are left-wing economically. In other words, they want strong public services. They want good pay for themselves and stuff like that and good jobs.
Yeah.
They also want us to behave like bastards to others.
Yes, so they do.
There are a lot of people like that. So that is why Reform UK said, we're just going to raise the income tax threshold to £20,000. Oh, we're going to make the NHS absolutely brilliant. We're going to have it fully staffed.
Simple solutions to complex problems. That's what Farage
that doesn't appeal to people on the right wing. That doesn't appeal to Conservatives. They don't give a shit about that. Yeah. In fact, that's a put off. That is a turn off to Conservative voters. What, raise the income tax threshold to £20,000? You won't get Conservative voters voting for that. So there's actually a load of them who will not vote Conservative even if Nigel Farage goes there, because that those voters will instantly peel off and they'll either vote for nobody or they might vote for, if Richard Tice tries to struggle along without Nigel Farage, they'll still vote for Reform UK and consider him, a betrayer. Or they'll just go back to voting Labour, Lib Dem, Green Party, whomever, right? The other problem is that even the ones that came from the Conservatives are now permanently pissed off with the Conservatives. So they won't vote for the Conservatives either. But
surely that's where Farage gets his money's worth, because he is not the Tories. It's the same with Trump joining the Republicans after giving money to the Democrats for years and running as an independent years and years ago.
No.
He's now a Republican, and he takes over and turns it into MAGA. And I can see Farage doing the same thing.
No, you can't see him doing the same thing. That's absolutely impossible with the way you can, but it's completely false. But then there's the other side of it as well. So the people who did vote Conservative. Now, it's like you and I. There are Labour are doing things and saying things that we really don't like, right? Now, we sort of begrudgingly accept some of the things because we know they have to park their tanks on the Tory lawns to get those votes and win power.
Yeah.
Well, Conservative voters have the same attitude. There are lots of moderate Conservative voters who don't really like this obsession with some of the crueler side of the anti-immigration stuff. They may themselves think, oh yeah, immigration is probably too high, but they really don't this idea of this latest idea of shooting at channel migrants with drones. So, but some of them will think, well, we sort of understand you've got to tread on Reform UK's toes to win their votes back. But if Nigel Farage joins them, it's like, well, we're not actually going to vote for Reform UK, which is what they will be doing, because Nigel Farage will insist on turning the Conservative Party into what Reform UK were.
Yes,
that is and that will be his. So they,
which I think would work.
It won't work. It can't work. Polling makes it clear.
We don't. He doesn't need to win. He doesn't need to win 100% of the vote. He doesn't even need to win 50% of the vote.
He won't even get 20% of the vote. We know this from polling. The people have actually been asked, if you voted Reform UK, would you vote Conservative? Nigel Farage was leading it. No. Big chunk of them. No. Conservative, people who voted Conservative, would you vote Conservative? Nigel Farage was leading the party. Big chunk of them. No.
Yeah, but Phil, they're Reform voters, they're Tory voters.
No.
They're known to lie. And this is why the polls are often out when you're dealing with these right-wing populists. Boris Johnson, he's a terrible, terrible leader. Half the party hated him. He got rid of half the party because they said, look, we don't want to do what you want to do. And then he won a landslide victory of 80 votes because Labour lost. And I agree that Labour lost against the populist leader who was offering simple solutions to complex problems, i.e. get Brexit done. Farage can do exactly the same thing. And don't forget, if as someone just said in the chat, he doesn't need the whole support of the parliamentary Tory party to become leader. He needs letters to go into the 1922 committee. How many do you need now? 17?
No.
He can do that. And then he needs 40 votes.
No. Apart from the fact it was 19, but they're changing the rules, it's going to be way more. No, Nigel Farage is not going to get the votes he needs to become leader. And the other thing is, it makes no difference whether you think he would or not. He would need to be guaranteed it. Chart this path, because you're not doing a risk and reward calculation here. From Nigel Farage's point of view, chart the path. Right, don't interrupt. So he thinks he can lead the Tory party to victory. He can't. He's not that stupid. But let's say you think he can, right?
Okay.
Because that's the only way because he will lose. He will lose all of his money that he currently gets. All of the people that currently give him money will stop giving him money. But if he can become prime minister, that is a hell of a payday afterwards, right? So he will absolutely do it if he thinks he can do that. So he defects. Instantly, he burns his bridges with Reform UK and all of those supporters that hate the Conservatives. So he's now committed. So he's in the Conservative Party. He has to be 100% sure that the current Tory leader will stand down or be voted out, and that because he daren't let it go to the members, even though polling sort of suggests maybe the majority of members would vote for him. He daren't let it go to. He would need to be assured that Tory MPs will basically crown him as leader.
Why wouldn't it go to the members? You say that
because he can't.
You just said that the majority will probably vote for him, and don't forget to vote for the leader of the Tory party. You don't need to be British. You could be Russian.
No.
And you could have been a member of the Tory party for a few years, the overseas friends of the Tory party, and you get to vote.
But that's irrelevant.
No, it's not. You don't get a vote.
It is irrelevant. You can't, if he can't, right, you're not listening. So let's say he gets to this point, right? He's joined the Tory party, and they don't make him leader. What then?
He joins the party, and they don't make him leader.
Yeah.
Then he becomes a rabble-rouser like Boris Johnson did for years. Gets himself on the TV every other day. Gets himself on the radio every other day. We have to see his horrible, disgusting visage
he loses
every
all
moment.
Of his support. He loses all of his support because he's shit the bed with the anti-establishment people, which are the people giving him the money right now. And I don't just mean the poor people watching him on GB News. I mean the people who are actually giving him the proper money.
Yes.
He loses all that. And now he's joined the Conservative
They give
Party.
money to Boris Johnson when he was part of the Tory party, when he was, not leader, but he was still being supported by Liz Truss. She's still getting supported by 55 Tufton Street to this day.
Yeah, but
to the tune of
not getting
millions.
She's not getting millions. She's getting flown around and stuff like that. She's not getting what. Well,
I think Farage would quite like that. To be
he's not. That would be a huge pay. You're talking about him burning his bridges for no guarantee of success, and then let's say he goes to.
I've got a couple of super chats. First of all, David, thank you very much, David Welsh, for the €10. To agree with Graham, you only have to believe that Tories are liars and voters are thick. What more evidence than the last 8 years do we need?
If they were that thick, they'd have voted Conservative at this election. They didn't.
And then Chris, a lot of them voted for refuck, didn't they? Chris C, thank you very much for the £10. Hi, Graham and Phil. Question for both. Do you think that any potential MP should be subjected to enhanced DBS credit record and security vetting before appointment and every 12 months thereafter? Yes. Thanks for the super chat. Yes.
They should also have to reveal all their financial details, regardless of what is the law for ordinary citizens.
Yeah.
We should know every penny of what they get and where it comes from and where it goes.
Yeah. Anyway, go back to the debate. So you can't see any conceivable way that in the next 5 years the Tories aren't going to panic going into the next election, realising they're going to be out in the political wilderness forever if they don't do something immediately, and they hold their nose and they invite Farage to cross the floor.
You're now behaving as if they're just this gestalt, right? And they're not. They're multiple groups, right? And it's for Farage, it's too big a risk.
Yeah.
Because in order for it to work out, he has to be accepted into the Conservative Party. He has to be made their leader, and he has to win the election. He will not win the election.
Why?
Because otherwise he loses all his money. He doesn't gain the money for being.
But if they're still propping up people like Liz Truss, why would they stop propping him up? If he was an MP and there was a chance of him winning in 2034, why would they stop supporting him?
Liz Truss is getting nothing.
Well, she's getting something. She's doing all these talks with the Heritage Foundation at £50,000, $50,000.
No, she's not getting 50,000.
No, but they're paying to see her.
Yes, but she's not getting much of. She's getting a few thousand.
I wouldn't cross the road.
There. Nigel Farage is getting millions.
For what?
He's doing talks and he's getting paid a lot more than Liz Truss.
Yes,
he was over in America a few weeks ago,
and he's not. He's not in any position to become prime minister of this country, is he? So if there was a chance,
as far as they're concerned, he is. They actually think the people he goes to talk to, some of them thought he was prime minister.
Oh Jesus!
Because they were seeing these news reports that he won the election. So actually, yeah. These people. Remember, you've got to remember, a lot of MAGAs don't really know who he is. So the ones who sort of think they do, and they look at this news, oh, Nigel Farage won the election. Oh, he's the prime minister. Great.
Okay,
you're laughing.
But the people who know what's going on, not the dickheads with money, but the people who know what's going on with money,
they don't give him any money.
The likes of Elon Musk and Vladimir Putin and all that lot.
Any money.
If he was in the Tory party, he knows, we know, they know that he would be much more likely to be prime minister than he is ever staying with refuck.
Oh yeah, but he's never. He has no chance of. The Tory party would actually collapse, and there's plenty of Tory MPs who understand that, right? There are.
I thought that would happen under Boris Johnson, and it just didn't. It kind of it broke apart like the T1000 and then glooped all back together, and I was like, oh my god.
That's because Boris Johnson is he has no firm beliefs on anything really. He's sort of libertarian. He has no firm
beliefs. The Brexit vote, them losing the Brexit, well, the leadership losing the Brexit vote, that should have been the end of them, but it wasn't. Theresa May's disastrous 2017 election, that should have been the end of it, but it wasn't. Proroguing Parliament in the summer of 2019, that should have been the end of it. But then,
why should any of these
Partygate, it didn't even get rid of Boris Johnson.
When in any country ever has a political party just disappeared without another one taking over?
Oh no, I'm sure that would happen if they got rid of the Tories entirely. But I don't think that the Tories are so embedded in society and establishment.
Well, also, just in terms of the
entirely,
electoral system, because you think about, well, who would replace them? So you've two options at the moment: Reform UK and the Lib Dems. Yeah. The Lib Dems are not popular enough in enough seats to realistically ever be able to win a government. I mean, if they actually did take over as the main opposition and that continued for a long enough time, but in a first past the post system, it won't. So, the Lib Dems are just not appealing enough in enough seats to realistically challenge, which means they can never really firmly establish themselves as the main opposition for more than a few years. Reform UK, it's a similar sort of thing. Their vote is too spread out.
Yeah.
When you say things like, oh, they came second in like 98 seats, but it was a very distant second in a great many of them. Very distant second.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm just seeing it as like, if I went out on the street and spoke to people here in Durham and said, do you know who Robert Jenrick is? They'll say who? Like 90% of the people I said that name to, they will never heard of him. If I say Nigel Farage, they've all heard of him. He's got that populist appeal, I guess, or his name. He's got the name recognition that you need, and I feel like you're hoping that people will be logical, and people aren't logical.
I know what they already think. You're saying that as if that's a good thing for Farage and a bad thing for Jenrick. It's a good thing for Jenrick and a bad thing for Farage. The reason why Farage is known is because he's been at the top of politics for over 10 years. Robert Jenrick hasn't. The fact that Robert Jenrick is unknown is a very good thing for Robert Jenrick, because it means, in theory, if he turns out not to be a complete cretin, then there's a lot of people, when you ask them, do you have
a complete cretin?
Yeah, I know, but let's say you weren't. If you've got a lot of people who say they've got a positive view of him or a negative view of him, the majority have no view of him. That's what polling shows.
Yeah.
So they're people who can be won over. So Robert Jenrick has the capacity. He won't, because he's an idiot, but he has the capacity to become popular. Yeah. Nigel Farage doesn't, because Nigel Farage's approval ratings, it's very rare, particularly after you've become well known for 10 years. It's very rare to change people's opinions of you. They either think you're good or bad. The only people's opinions you can change are the ones who aren't sure. They are available to be won over. And that number is very small for Nigel Farage. The don't knows is a very slender slither. So he cannot become popular. He can't become popular. And also, the reason
I would argue that he already is popular enough.
No, he's not. He's very unpopular.
Yes, people hate him, but people hate Trump.
No.
They
don't. No, they don't. And specifically, when people are polled, would you vote for a party led by Nigel Farage? The vast majority say no. This 14%, okay, it was the third most, but it's of distant. You cannot win with that many. And
absolutely, I agree that he cannot win with
Conservative.
With Refuck.
He will not take the Conservative vote.
I think
he will lose it. It will go.
I think that he can.
There's no thing. The surveys make it really great. I cannot say it any clearer. Surveys show that Nigel Farage will cost the Conservatives votes. Every think tank that wants the Conservatives to win, even the nutter ones, even the ones that are pushing the same policies as Nigel Farage, know that Nigel Farage cannot win. He is a populist, but he's not popular. In theory, someone who was more popular has a better chance. That is why what Nigel Farage does, and he knows this because he's not an idiot, he does his stuff from outside the Conservative Party. He exists to say to the Conservative Party, in order for you to have a chance at winning the election, you need us not to stand. Yeah. Our requirements to not to stand are for you to adopt certain policies. He can do that. That is a viable strategy, and that is the strategy that he has been paid to adopt by his paymasters. They will not give him money to throw it all away by joining the Conservatives and sinking them into oblivion.
But do you think that they're smart enough to see that that is what would happen?
The people giving Nigel Farage the money are incredibly smart. That is why they've basically managed to rule the world. They already do. So people like Putin are very clever.
So they're happy for him. They're happy for him to stay on the sidelines, throwing rotten tomatoes.
He's not on the sidelines. He's not on the sidelines.
Okay.
He's
not in power though, is he?
Party. If he joins the Conservative Party, then that's it. It's gone, right? Here's the thing. First of all, they won't actually vote for him to be leader. Second of all, if they did, right, let's say they did take leave of their senses.
The Tory party membership won't vote for him.
No, Tory MPs. It doesn't go to the members if Tory MPs block it. Simple as that.
Yeah, but there's only a handful of Tory MPs now, and someone like Kemi Badenoch can get into the final two. And Robert Jenrick.
Yeah, because
we have a 100% record of nutters.
Is nowhere near as bad as Nigel Farage. Nowhere near as bad.
Okay, well, let's talk about the perception of popularity then. Because I've been led to believe that people really, really love Nigel Farage. And this isn't just from polls, but this is, I mean, you know, the plural of anecdotes isn't data, but I've spoken to people who think he's absolutely wonderful, the best thing to happen to British politics.
There are people...
And I would say there's almost 50% of the population who in some way or form believe that. And you've got two things if he joins the Tory party. You've got the fact that it legitimizes his batshit ideas on one hand, and also for the people who are anti-establishment, they can go, oh, it's okay because he's going to be our Trojan horse into the establishment, and then we'll all come out the horse and we'll take it over. Because that's the way they see him. They see him as this anti-establishment figure when he's not. He's a privately educated ex-city financier. I was going to say banker, but he was never a banker, was he? And a career politician. I mean, the guy is as establishment as they come. He goes grouse hunting, for God's sake. But I think that there are parts of that, the melding of Farage and the hideous monster that is the Tory party, the hideous monster that's Farage and the hideous monster that's the Tory party, that would appeal to voters. Enough of them. Not many, you're right, not everyone, but enough of them to manoeuvre him into a position of power.
On the far right who will openly say that Nigel Farage is as a wrong one. So when you've got some on the far right of the Tory party who will say that he should never be allowed in the Conservative Party, then the rest of the MPs definitely are clear that they would not allow him in. He would not make it he would not become leader. And if he did, he would lose the election. And the people who are really paying him, they know that. They know at the moment there is a realistic chance that the Conservative Party will be shoved further and further to the right because of, like, as soon as Nigel Farage joins the Conservative Party, the Danger Reform UK just melts away.
Okay, all right.
Completely melts away. So then the Conservatives will think, well, now we can win. Because Nigel Farage, what does he do? Go with his, when they don't make him leader, go with his tail between his legs? In fact, it would actually be more likely that the Conservatives would invite Nigel Farage into the parliamentary party, laughing behind their hands, thinking he thinks we're going to make him leader. Actually, we're just screwing him over.
That could happen. Another thing that could happen, because there's no one quite as Machiavellian as the people in the Tory party. They'll stab each other in the back for, you know, a pound of flesh or 30 pieces of silver. Chris C, thank you very much for the super chat. Sorry, Phil. I have to believe that Farage would not last as the leader of the Tories for two reasons. One, he can do more damage from the sidelines, which is what you've been saying. Two, he is lazy and the people of Clacton are finding that out. Yes, but Boris Johnson is also incredibly lazy.
Boris Johnson listens to advice, though.
Really? Come on.
Oh, no. When
through COVID?
No, well, that was because that's where the libertarian side of him knackered it up. Yeah. If it weren't for COVID, he'd have been fine for much longer. But
yes, I agree with that.
If you go right back to, like, when he went off, he entered Parliament, right, and then David Cameron says, "Oh, I've got a great idea for you, Alex," because that's what these mates really call him. "I've got a great idea for you, Alex. Why don't you go off and be Mayor of London?" Snigger, snigger, snigger. So he went off and was getting his arse handed to him by Ken Livingstone, and then Boris Johnson got in, Isaac Levidow, who obviously has now shit the sheets a little bit in the last few years in Australia and here. But at the time, he was considered a really good strategist, and he did a really good job. Like that Gutter Harris cretin that people keep talking to, just because he's been a Boris Johnson advisor, he must know his stuff. It's like, yeah, he advised him during all the periods when he crashed and burned. So Gutter Harris was Johnson's campaign strategist, where he was losing, and then got Isaac Levidow in and completely changed his campaign strategy. Yeah. Ken Livingstone failed to adapt. Boris Johnson won, Mayor of London, then won again with Isaac Levidow. Then, during the 2019 general election, again, it wasn't Dominic Cummings running that, it was Isaac Levidow again. So he was listening to advice. Boris Johnson, when he was successful by actually getting people who knew what they were doing to advise him, and he listened to that advice. This image of Boris Johnson, the ruffled hair and I don't really know, all that stuff is a.
But this can all be true. Yeah, I think you're right, Phil, and it can all be true. But he's still lazy. He still couldn't be arsed doing the job, which is the same as bloody Farage in Clacton. He's not. I don't think he's even set up his surgery yet.
No, he hasn't. But it doesn't matter, because being prime minister, what do you have to do? You shuffle up to prime minister's questions once a week. Well, Nigel Farage will be happy to do that. You go along to the king once a week. Well, he'll love doing that. That's all you have to do as prime minister. You just set your cabinet. There are lots of obviously, prime ministers who take the job seriously work really hard.
And attend Cobra meetings, as Vendessa's just pointed out.
That's why, if you look at some prime ministers, they age a lot in the first few years.
Yes.
Because if you do it and you're serious about it,
they get much sleep.
Whereas Boris Johnson hasn't really aged a lot, because he just put his feet up.
No.
But at the same time, the difference between a hard-working prime minister and a lazy prime minister is like, as far as the public concerned, as long as you've got the right advisors, you don't notice the difference. You don't know the difference, because your cabinet do all the actual work. All you have to do is make the right appointments. That is the job of the prime minister, really, making the right appointments.
And this is why I think it'll appeal to Farage.
He won't.
He's like, I don't have to do stuff. I just get to meet the king. That's boss.
But he's unpopular.
Yeah.
Like Rishi Sunak, when he took over as leader of the Conservative Party, more specifically, not just prime minister, the party was unpopular, but he wasn't that unpopular. In fact, during COVID, he was actually very popular because of furlough, but I mean, that sort of disappeared after furlough. But he wasn't unpopular, and Tories felt that he would be able to drag the party's reputation up to his level. In actual fact, they dragged his down to theirs.
Yes.
But Farage he will come into an unpopular party, because bear in mind, they're not going to invite Farage in unless the Tory party polling is really falling far behind Labour again.
Which I think it will do. I think it will do. As Labour's policies kick in and people start feeling better and they start forgetting about the shit at the beginning of the tenure government, I think, the Tories could see a further plunge, especially if they got, when they have Genovic or Badenoch leading them, who are just incredibly uncharismatic. They've got no riz.
But Nigel Farage is unpopular.
Nobody leaders.
The answer to being unpopular is not to invite someone in who's just as unpopular. And the other thing as well to throw, there's so many things in here. The other thing is, we know that Boris Johnson will make himself available at this time. He's said so.
Yes, he has.
And it's easier.
So you think they're more likely to go with Boris Johnson?
Way more likely. Because Tory MPs, they do believe that he could win an election.
Yeah.
They don't think Nigel Farage can. Remember, Nigel Farage, it took him 8 goes to even win a parliamentary seat. They don't think he's some magician in an election at all.
Yeah.
It's not just that. I mean, they hate him personally. They hate his policies. They know his policies are unworkable, because that's the other thing. Like he says about this
I completely agree that if Johnson, MPs, they'll take Johnson back in before they take Farage. But if Johnson's not available,
he is available. But even if that weren't the case, they still wouldn't take Farage, because they know full well, they know absolutely, even if everything you say, which is completely batshit and against the polling, even if everything you say happened and that he joined, they made him leader, he won the election, became prime minister, they know for certain that his policies are unworkable, and they would instantly just become deeply unpopular again, and probably that would be it for them.
But do we not look at Brexit and think that's unworkable because it's not going to?
No, because they hid a lot of it. Brexit still hasn't happened. Like,
I mean, the
still
Rwanda policy.
The
Rwanda policy is utterly batshit. Even James cleverly used the word batshit to talk about it.
Yeah, but it was never put to the test, so now they'll say it was going to work.
Exactly. I don't think the Tories have got some, no. Oh no, this is a bit too batshit from us.
You're talking about them putting Nigel Farage to the test, actually having him win the election and his policy being put to the test. They know it's going to fail. They know that for certain.
Yeah.
Even the right-wing nutters know that his policies will not work. And Nigel Farage, of course, he can't come into the Tory party, lead them, and suddenly go, all these policies I'm going to have to tone them down because the suits in the Tory party won't let me have them. Because that'd be
what's the big difference between what Farage is offering and Robert Jenrick, who wants to take us out of the European Convention of Human Rights?
That's just one thing, right? They think, because from Tories' point of view, they wouldn't necessarily. I mean, there's a lot of Tories against it, but they'll just think to themselves, yeah, but it's up to, they'll just think, well, you could just basically copy. Like for a lot of people that agree with taking us out of their beef is with the idea of this foreign court deciding. There are plenty of conservatives.
I hate that expression.
I know, but there are plenty of conservatives who will just take the approach, well, we'll still have the same laws, the same human rights. We'll just have a British court decide them, which they are anyway. Yeah. So it's nothing like what Nigel Farage is supporting at all. Well, because in their mind, it just means it's the same thing with the Conservatives who went along with Brexit to begin with. They just thought, well, if we leave membership, I mean, if that's all we leave, we're not going to leave the single market. It just means we don't have a say, but we'll still have access to markets and stuff like that. So they sort of went along with it, thinking that the damage would be limited, and then it wasn't. Well, some will, keep making the same mistake, but there's some of them who will look at Brexit now and think that was a hell of a mistake. We're not going to do it again.
But they still won 2 elections after the Brexit referendum
and then
fraud-amendum.
But
I think you're less cynical than I am, because I just see the Tory party as an election-winning machine. It's a machine set up to win elections. They don't give a shit about policies. They don't have an ethos. They don't have any morals. They don't have any scruples. And they will fuck over whoever they need to fuck over in order to gain power again. And if they decide in their demented little brains, because
it's impossible.
You're saying logically they shouldn't do this.
I'm not saying logically. I'm saying Tory MPs have been quite clear that this is impossible. They are clear that Nigel Farage cannot win. They understand this. There's plenty of what you're doing is you're listening to some Tory commentators on social media. People like Mike Graham who thinks you can grow fucking concrete. They're
just
idiots.
A sec. There's a knock at the door, Phil. I'm going to answer the door. You continue on.
I'll carry on rambling on.
Carry on, man.
So this nonsense, for example, about if you just, and there's too many Tories do this. If you just add up the number of Reform UK votes and Conservative votes, and it's like we put them together. It's like, but Reform UK votes are not Conservative votes. And like Tim Shipman of the Times was recently saying this week. He was saying, this 14% of the votes that came from the Conservative Party, it never came from the Conservative Party. A lot of them came from the Conservative Party. Some of them came from people who'd never voted before because they didn't have a party they wanted to vote for. Some of them came from Labour, some the Lib Dems, some Green Party. Some, believe it or not, from the SNP and Plaid even. They came from everywhere, but mostly from the Conservative Party. And then you've got a lot of Conservative voters who are only voting for what looks like far-right nonsense because they think it's like a loss leader to stop Reform UK stealing more of their votes. It's a bit like in this, in the Labour Party, we'll sort of accept Labour talking about, using some of the immigration rhetoric they've been using, and we'll sort of go, oh, well, we have to win those voters over. But there we go. Was it anything good at the door?
No, it was a package for Catherine. It was a package. It was Amazon. I don't know what's in it, but unfortunately, it couldn't get
from
through
Amazon. Don't they usually just drop kick it through the window?
Amazon's not so bad. Every other ones that are cursed. But yeah, so I'll meet you in the middle. I think that you're right up to a certain point that the Tories at this moment in time would not want Nigel Farage to be coming over to their side. I think there is, and I might be wrong, but if Boris Johnson doesn't come back and they go into panic mode after they melt down in the next general election, I can see after 2029 them going, we need to win. We need to win no matter what.
And when they do that, they realise that you win with someone who appeals to the centre. Like one thing. See, this is why there's a funny thing. So Robert Jenrick in an interview today, so he's coming out again trying to sort of row back. He tried to semi-apologise for painting over Mickey Mouse, for example. He goes, oh, yeah, like there are things I would do differently. And then he basically said he was totally right to do it in the first place. It wasn't much of an apology.
Oh, my God.
But nonetheless, he's trying to come on and he's trying to sort of moderate. And when he was asked specifically, so there is this rumour going around that he has privately told some MPs that, oh yeah, when I win, I'm going to tack back to the centre because obviously we need to capture the centre to an election, right? In other words, he's going to screw over the far right of the party.
Yeah.
So this was put to him. He says, have you privately told any of your colleagues that you're going to tack back to the centre? And to begin with, he didn't answer he was a bit not, you shouldn't believe everything you read in the papers. So then he was asked the question again and said, no, I haven't told anyone that. And then he took umbrage with the basic of the question by saying, but you know how lots of people tried to say on the right of the party that Rishi Sunak's basically a Marxist because they reckon they're centre right.
Yeah.
And therefore, if they're centre right, he must be a raving socialist, right? So Jenrick was doing the same trick. He was trying to say, well, I'm already fairly central, because that's what he was attacking the context of the question by saying, well, actually, I think you'll find I'm fairly moderate myself. So, and even Tories who are themselves very far from the centre, they know that you need to capture the centre to win an election. So they just try and pretend that these batshit extremist policies are actually fairly moderate centrist policies.
Yeah. Well, I'd see them, there's like two ways they can go after the next election. If they lose again, which they probably will, touch wood. I can see them seeing the light and going, exactly what you just said. Hang on, we need someone centralist in order to win this.
It'll take him another loss.
Well, that's what I'm thinking. We could go even more batshit, and bringing Nigel Farage into the fold would be, and I absolutely 100% right on this, Phil. It would be batshit, and it probably wouldn't work, right? In terms of getting them back into power.
I
don't think that it's outside the realms of possibility based on the batshit policies and the batshittery of the Tory party over the last 14 years.
Nigel Farage would not do it himself. It's not in his interest.
Right.
It would only be in his interest if he would have to be very, very confident that he's going to, his ego. No, his ego is actually fed much better by being the person that everyone would say he would be prime minister if he was in the Conservative Party. It is much better because every politician fails, even good ones. Everyone fails in the end.
Yeah.
So it's much better. He can be immortal, basically. I think he actually is immortal. He can.
Don't say that.
I think he is. But he can actually be politically immortal by never, ever getting his hands anywhere near the levers of power. Because then he can always be the person. It's like anyone else.
Well, if you see him in the street and he says to you, I'm thinking of joining the Tories, you need to tell him all this. So
no, because I want him to. It'd be hilarious. But he won't. He won't.
That's quite funny. So you're saying this isn't going to happen because you want it to happen. I don't want it to happen. And I'm saying
I do. It's the end of the Tory party then. It's finished. Woo! Because in order for Nigel Farage to become leader, you'd actually have to, because there's lots of structures within the Tory party that would not allow it.
Yeah.
So you'd have to sweep them all aside.
We have got Alec Barrett, who's just dropped in a £5 super chat. Thank you. That's very kind of you. You might as well add up Labour, Lib Dem, and Green Party votes together. Ta-da! You have the new super party that will win all the elections. No, it's not as simple as that. And then I think Alec is being a little bit facetious there. And Matthew G says, "Didn't centralism give us Corbyn, Brexit, Farage?"
No. What gave us Corbyn was Ed Miliband decided, well, I mean, obviously he'll have been advised as well, but deciding that it was a good, when the Tories came to power in 2010 and said, we're going to now have to do all these terrible things, it's all Labour's fault, austerity's Labour's fault.
Yeah.
Ed Miliband's Labour went, yeah, we're sorry. And it's like, instead of going, no, we were actually managing the banking crisis.
Wasn't us. Yeah.
We were just about,
they did the same thing in 2019, where all they did on the doorstep was slag off the last Labour government. oh yeah, Blair, everyone's a Blairite, red tie Tory, Blair, and you're like,
that was the end. That was the end of
why would you slag yourselves off?
Corbyn was the fact that the Labour leadership, for reasons best known to itself, decided to go, yeah, sorry, austerity, it's all our fault. Yeah, we totally understand why you have to do it. And Corbyn was the one going, are you fucking mental? Yeah. No, austerity is never a good idea.
Yep.
So he was the voice of reason between 2010 and 2015.
True.
That is why a load of, and actually also, it was also a cock up because, Labour MPs backed Corbyn for, the leadership ballot because they thought he was a worthwhile voice in the debate.
Yeah.
Which went badly wrong.
This debate has gone on a little bit too long.
Voting.
And we've only got 4 minutes left, Phil, to talk about the Employment Rights Bill. Shit. Do you want to quickly talk about the Employment Rights Bill very, very fast?
Yeah, it's going to take a long time.
Yes.
And the Tory
there's a bunch of stuff that's not on there.
Tear it down as much as possible.
So we've got day one rights. So you're qualified from protection against unfair dismissal from day one.
Yeah,
sick pay.
There's two. I mean, there will be a probationary period in there where it'll be easier to be dismissed. But again, still, they can't just sack you for what for no reason.
And the probation periods, because they have 2-year probation periods, and then just before you go on a full contract, they sack you, and then they get someone else to do the probationary period. So that's going as well. Yeah. But one of the things that's not in there is the right to 10 off. But they say they're going to bring this in. This is
it's guidance.
Yeah. This is the right to switch off is so you're not bothered by a text message off your boss at 10 o'clock at night.
Yeah. It's disappointing. At the same time, it's not like the most grievous one in terms of the major abuses in the workplace. I mean, they seem to be covered.
So fire and rehire is going 0 hours contracts.
Unless the employee
pushing for
asks
flexible working. There's the Fair Work Agency, which is going to be an enforcement body. Which will enforce rights such as holiday pay, etc.
Again, we'll have to be. I'm going to maintain cynicism of that one because, if we look at enforcement bodies like Ofgem and Ofcom and Ofwat and stuff like that, it's like, is it?
They are bloody useless.
So it remains to be seen if they actually make. If you're going to be, we're going to have a regulator. Doesn't that sound marvelous?
Hang on, Phil.
But the regulators we have.
Were those regulators more effective under the previous Labour government? Was it the fact that the Tories put their cronies into power?
You could argue that, but I would still say it shouldn't. That shouldn't be. If you set them up right, it shouldn't matter what sort of government you have.
Yeah.
So.
Well, yeah. I mean, that's the way it should be, but in reality, unfortunately,
I'm just going to say, don't get too excited about a regulator. I mean, it might well be that they actually do give them the teeth to do the work properly, and I hope they do. But I'm not going to suddenly go, oh yeah, they're going to have a regulator. It'll be marvelous, because people will just go, Phil, Ofcom, Ofgem. What about them then?
So the low pay commission is going to be buffed up, and it must take into account the cost of living. This is going to mean a lot of young people, especially, are going to see a pay rise as a direct result of Labour coming in. That might, some might see that as a bribe.
I mean,
I'm hoping that's going to solidify a lot of young voters into wanting Labour to stay in power.
Why should an 18-year-old doing the same job as a 23-year-old get paid less?
Yeah.
Because it's for minimum wage. That's what we're talking about here. The minimum wage, because at the moment there's different bands. That I think, is it 23 where you just get the main band then? But whatever it is, so younger workers can have a lower minimum wage, and it's like if you're doing a job that's at the minimum wage anyway, it's considered one that's. And I know people say there's no such thing as an unskilled job, which is true enough. But when they say unskilled, they mean they can teach you the basics within a few hours. You don't need a qualification for it or any great level of training. So if you're doing something like that, working in retail or something for minimum wage, then why should an 18-year-old be deemed much less good at it than a 23-year-old?
Yeah.
But yes, it does mean young people, after this comes into effect, which will presumably, if the legislation doesn't pass into law for another year, it's probably another 2 years before you see that filtering through. But yeah, it'll mean a massive pay rise for young people.
Yeah. Yeah. So the way this has been reported, obviously in the newspapers, has all been negative, including a newspaper on Times, I think today, Telegraph. It was the Telegraph saying that basically this employment rights bill is going to give more money to Labour because it's going to force people to join more unions, and the unions are going to give some of their money to Labour if they're a Labour-affiliated union. Don't forget the RMT is not a Labour-affiliated union, for instance. It's exhausting. It's like every day. It's like every day for the next 5 years when
thing is as well.
Labour do something, the Tory press are
going to be like, why? They believe it, and that's because they just think they honestly think Labour is as bad as themselves, because they know the Tories do this. Oh, you give us a donation, we'll give you a public contract, right? Yeah. So because the Tories literally use public money to give themselves kickbacks, because that's what effectively it is, they honestly think Labour are just as bad as them, because everyone judges morality by their own standards. So they think that they honestly will believe that this is some fancy kickback. Whereas in reality, all Labour are doing regarding unions, apart from actually inviting them to discuss with business leaders future policy, because that's one of Labour's big things, that a lot of these policies, they should be decided not just by politicians, but representatives of business and unions as well. But beyond that, all they're doing is rowing back on the Tories' anti-union laws. They're not forcing people to use. I wish they did. I wish we had a thing where the government said, don't pay to join a union. The state will fund a standard union membership fee for every worker. And the worker just chose which union they wanted to be in, but the money came effectively from the state. The state would provide a standard fee. And that way, everyone, you could still choose to not be in a union if you were morally opposed to it, I suppose, but it would mean no one would have a reason not to be in a union. The expectation would be you would join a union, and you could, and the Tories could like that because it's market forces, because the worker gets to decide which union they join, and the unions that get the most members will get the most money.
Yeah,
it's all very fair.
Good old capitalism.
It's a set rate.
Capitalism.
Yeah, set rate.
The capitalisation of unions. Chris C, thank you very much for the super chat, which I think is going to be the last of the show. Scrap the phrase minimum wage, make it one hourly rate for all ages, and call it the national wage, and triple lock it as well.
The thing is, the Tories they changed it anyway. It's not, I call it minimum wage because
the living wage.
They called it the living wage. So that's officially what it is now, and that's why Boris Johnson claimed that the Tories introduced it. Or we introduced it, So
you changed the name. Yeah. That's brilliant. So you can just take anything and just change the name on the front page. Is how I wrote this book.
You've done it.
Yeah, exactly. I'll do that with Boris Johnson's new book. There was a fantastic cartoon. I don't know if it was in the Private Eye or something, or in the newspapers, and it was Boris Johnson putting up posters for his new book, billboard with paste on a wall, and it's the COVID memorial wall. Yeah. Oof.
But that's what it is. It's I've not read it, but I've read what others have said is in it, and he's basically just trying to rewrite history. Yes. He's trying to tell some of the old lies, but he's telling new lies as well. Yes.
He's lying about the things he lied about in the past that he's admitted that he lied about, and now he got asked a really good question this week when they said, which lie do you regret the most? When you lied to the Queen about proroguing Parliament, or when you lied to Parliament about the parties? And he just didn't take. He said, "I didn't lie about anything to anyone at all." God, I hate that man.
Yeah.
Anyway,
even his own supporters knew he was a liar. I remember in 2019,
he unapologised.
There was that general election debate,
40 hospitals.
And at one point he was asked if he's honest, if he always tells the truth, and he said yes. And the audience laughed, and it wasn't just a section of it was the whole audience. So even his own supporters knew that it's a thing. Someone saying there about in Norway you can deduct union fees from taxes. The thing is, there are some things you can do that in theory in this country as well. It might even be for union fees, I have no idea. But because we use the PAYE system, most people don't muck about with taxes. So that wouldn't actually help. It might actually be the case. I don't know. There are some things you can that are tax deductible, that because if you're an employee, you just get you don't do your own tax returns. It's hassle, you won't do it. So it might well be the case in this country already, and I have no idea. So it'd be just better if the government just said, look, we're going to, they can raise taxes by 0.1% or whatever. And it's a standard fee, £10 a month or whatever, £100 a year, whatever it is, and the worker just chooses which union's going to be best for them, and the money gets paid. They just fill in the form, and the money it's like a prescription, isn't it? It's like or medical treatment. They just bill the government for it. You fill in the form and to that union, and they bill the government on your behalf.
Yeah, exactly. Donkey in the chat is talking about the duty of candour. Like, I'm sure that was in the King's Speech, the Hillsborough Law, which is going to be, all public servants must have a duty of candour.
Yes.
Does that extend to politicians as well? Because they're public servants, aren't they?
I don't. Well, no, they're not.
God damn it!
But there is a lot of cross-party support, including from the Conservatives in Wales, for a law that would make it illegal for politicians to lie.
Ooh.
So something like that could be quite, because that's something I would be interested in. Now, you'd have to be a bit careful. You don't want, I think there are some lies that are fine as long as it doesn't relate to your public duties, right? As long as it's not trying to con the public. So there are such things as parts of your private life that you're welcome to lie about. But I think for certain lies, yes, it should actually be a serious offence for a politician, not just in the House of Commons, but actually, because how many times do you have it where a politician will say one thing in the House of Commons where there are sort of consequences for telling obvious lies, particularly if you're not in the government, but then they'll go straight outside and talk to a reporter and just say the complete opposite.
Or vice versa. They'll say something in Parliament because they know they're protected by the free speech in Parliament, so they can't be done for
parliamentary privilege. Yeah, but that's a good rule. That's a good rule.
And then no, I'm not saying it's a bad rule. I'm just saying they'll say one thing in Parliament, but they won't repeat it outside Parliament because they know they'll get sued. Anyway, Phil, we're going to have to leave it there, I'm afraid. We've got a little bit over time. I hope you enjoyed that debate. And thank you very much to everyone. I'm just having a look at the chat, see if there's any more super chats come in. No, they haven't. So thanks for the chat. Thanks for the super chat. Thanks as always to Phil. Are you about this evening, Phil? Do you want to come on the old Politics Social? Got better things to do.
We're back to being quite late again.
Going out raving.
And I am.
Going out raving.
I am spending so much time at the moment. I haven't been able to go out and play Warhammer for ages. I keep getting ill. People keep bringing things into the house. And then it's actually really hard to find suitable political stories because the government's too boring these days.
I know. God damn it. Well, can we go back to the good old days when the Tories are doing batshit and saying things every day and making our lives worse?
Well, I don't mind them doing that from opposition. It's entertaining opposition, not in government.
Yeah.
But they, despite the fact that the media would have you think there's a new scandal every day with Labour, in reality, no, it really isn't.
It's very tame. It's very tame. Just have a look at the difference between how much Keir Starmer got for his clothes and then have a look at how much Boris Johnson got for his wallpaper. It's orders of magnitude difference. Anyway, I've got to leave it there. So please join us tonight at 9:30 where we'll be talking a bit more about what's been going on in America this year and also other stuff that we've missed has happened in the UK this year, this week. Sorry, this year. What am I talking about? This week. And so hopefully we'll see you then. And if not, have a great weekend. That's it. We're going to go. That's it. So thanks for watching. Give us a chat. Give us a like on the way out. And until next time, I'll say hello, good evening, welcome, and goodbye.